So for people listening thinking, well, if my emotions are going to take control of this and they're all over the place, then, am I doomed? So what would you say to people who are feeling like, I want my head in control here, not my emotions? What do I do about this?
The short of it is you're doomed. And I don't mean, no, but really is, there's a lot, like I see a lot of investment commercials that'll say, we take the emotions out of investing. It's like, no, you don't. Nobody takes the emotions out of investing. You will always have emotions. They'll never go away. The question becomes, what actions do you take as a function of your emotions? Are your emotions in control of you, or are you in control of your emotions? Or at least if you're not in control of your emotions, are you in control of how you respond to your emotions?
Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations and let's transform your financial life together. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and very excited to bring a fabulous guest to the show today. And he is quite aligned with the limit-free life philosophy of understanding your relationship with money and the psychology behind money. And he's also a financial planner and advisor. So I love when people in the industry blend those things because it's rare, actually. We don't see too many of them. So I'm going to introduce you to our guest, and then we're going to dive into a lively conversation, like the intro said. So founder and CEO of Paradigm Shift Financial, Thomas Blottenberger, CFP, CHFC, ABEP is not your average financial planner. He's an American dream experience leader, guiding individuals to actualize their American dream by aligning their mindset and financial investments with their greater purpose. When Thomas entered the world of financial planning in 2010, he discovered that the industry was colder and more impersonal than he had imagined, strictly focused on commissions and quotas over people. Paradigm Shift Financial provides breakthrough education and tools to help individuals and their families transform their financial futures. Thomas is committed to allowing his clients to change their relationship with money from one of worry, stress, and scarcity to one of peace of mind and freedom. He firmly believes that when people discover their true purpose for money, they can utilize the Nobel Prize-winning science of investing to make more meaningful, impactful financial decisions. Welcome, Thomas.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I remember that suit picture. Man.
I know guests are always like, oh, that picture.
I love the picture. It's just by comparison, right, with my Winch T-shirt on today.
I love it. They're seeing all sides of you. We're even financial advisors and planners are real people who wear T-shirts.
I'm not a robot. I'm multifaceted. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I love what your bio says about leading people to their American dream, whatever that might be for them. And let's hear a little background. You probably maybe didn't start out this way. So kind of how did you start out and what led you to sort of these shifts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the short version is when I was in college, I watched my family go through some really tough financial times. My grandfather went in for a surgery that didn't go well. He ended up in a coma for 9 months, and then he passed away. And I got to see all the financial pieces that weren't put together properly. And I thought, well, this is an area I could really make a difference. This is the area I want to help people. And so I was already in business school, so I switched from just normal, general business to finance. I passed the certified financial planner designation before I graduated college. And I interviewed about 23 different companies before I chose which one to join. And, what I had thought, I think maybe naively, probably because I was just out of college, was that people make decisions based off of knowledge. Like if you learn something, that you then have access to now taking new actions. And after the first few years in the career, I started to realize, like, man, knowing something isn't making any difference for people. Like I'm teaching them how to, budget or cash flow strategies or insurance strategies or whatever it is, and they're learning new things. But then when it comes time to actually taking the action, nothing's happening. And it was around that time, that was like 3 years in. I'm like, man, maybe there's more to this than just like, let me show you a good strategy. And I think it was probably about 2015, I had a client where we put together a strategy that saved about $1,500 a month, and of paying off debts and changing strategies. And I said, okay, let's meet in a month to make sure it's still working, make sure everything's still going good. We meet a month later, and all that $1,500 is now somewhere else. It's been spent again. And I think the average financial advisor, I think the average person puts the blame elsewhere and goes, what's wrong with them? Why are they doing that? That's crazy. And instead I looked at like, well, why wasn't what I taught effective? Why is it that people don't make decisions based off of just learning something? And that's basically what led me down this path. I started to learn new things. I started to discover, hey, actually, weirdly, your mind has a lot to do. How you think about things has a lot to do with the actions you take. And that all culminated to me even learning that the investment strategies I was using at the old firm weren't good. Like they actually hurt people. It was gambling and speculating with their money instead of actually prudent investing strategies. And when I learned that, along with the mindset, I decided to leave and start Paradigm Shift.
Wow.
And that's it's been about 6 years now, 7 years, 7 years. And that's just been a journey of discovering my own brain, how I think, how I operate, so that I can impart that to other people.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love hearing that story because I feel like I had that same journey, only you figured it out much sooner. 3 years is really great. Probably took me 20 years in finance accounting to finally learn that for myself, because I was the same. I was like, the more, as long as you have the knowledge, you'll be fine. Well, then I took myself and our family into a pretty poor financial situation. I had to ask myself too, like, why? What's going on here? And once you start digging into how your beliefs and your thoughts about money dictate what you do with it, and the knowledge just goes, flying to the back of your head somewhere, and you operate based on your emotions. And so, I've become obsessed with this topic because I think everybody could have far more, more money, abundance, whatever you want to call it, overall, if you understand yourself and you can observe your thoughts and shift them into something else. I love Shift Financial. That's such a, that's such an appropriate kind of name. So how do you actually implement some of this with clients? Because they probably aren't onto this. They want to go to you and have you tell them what to do and think they're going to do it.
Right. Yes. Well, sometimes it's even better. Sometimes they think they're going to tell me what to do. And I think that's a big flaw. I will say I think that's a big flaw of the financial industry in general. Is you said it when we were starting the conversation that it's kind of rare to have someone actually in the industry that's practicing in the industry also talk about these topics. And the reason is pretty simple. I mean, the majority of the industry is akin to or equivalent to salespeople. Not that that's bad, it just doesn't necessarily work, right? If I'm employed with a company and my revenue is generated predominantly off of commissions, I have less of an interest in spending the time and the effort, the energy to coach you, and more of an interest trying to convert your mindset into buying the product that I have to sell. And so there's certain instances where the product that someone has to sell may not even fit, but the industry teaches you to try to make it fit. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift away from that. That's why fiduciary is becoming such a buzzword. That's why, actual planners and CFPs and things of that nature are becoming more purposeful or like sought after. But I would say, I'm going to answer that question in a slightly roundabout way. The first piece is, one of the questions I get asked a lot these days is about fiduciary. And people will say, are you a fiduciary? And by law, most people have to be fiduciaries now. And what the definition of a fiduciary is that you put the client's interest above your own. But then I usually follow up with a question that starts to engage some interesting conversation, which is, how would you know if the person that you're working with is actually acting in a fiduciary capacity? How would you know if they're actually putting your interest above their own? And that's where it gets a little interesting. So how I would answer that question and how I help people shift their mindset. So getting back to the main topic of your question is, people have to actually be willing to learn in my process. They have to actually take on the role of student and participate. I don't let anybody actually work with me unless they're open to learning about how some of this stuff works, how their own brain works, what the actual science is around investing, how they're investing compared to what the Nobel Prize winning research says. I've had people tell me, hey, listen, I don't want to learn any of that. I just want to give you my money. And I go, nope, sorry. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's also rare, because the majority of the industry would be like, oh, okay, you don't want to learn, but you want to pay me? Oh, okay, great.
Well, and don't you think most of the time they don't want you to learn? That's just something they're not really prepared. They're not teachers. They're there to, some are, but.
So one of my mentors named Mark Mattson, he's frequently on national TV. And there was this one segment where he was on national TV kind of sharing some of the science and telling people, it's not, the actual quote is, it's not, brain surgeon rocket science stuff. Yeah. And the host shushes him and goes, shh, it's my job to tell people that it is.
Yeah. Yeah. That, I sometimes hate bringing this up, but I am anyway. I feel like that's been very detrimental to women, especially, because as soon as you make finance seem so complicated, I think women who already are kind of like, oh, I don't do well in math, even though my sister's actually got a PhD in math and is incredibly brilliant. But for many, many women, they feel like they just can't understand it for some reason. And of course, it's much simpler. It is not rocket scientist or rocket science. And if you can, add, multiply, subtract, and divide, you're probably pretty good with finance at the level you're going to deal with it.
You would hope so, yes. But then that's the other issue, is it's not just math, right? It's all the brain science that goes into play.
Yeah.
What's interesting, just along those lines, I found that women are much easier to teach these concepts to, because men have their ego wrapped up into it.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's kind of a crazy thing. You just brought up a great point, because while women are kind of nervous and like, I don't know if I can do this and I don't understand it, they're the ones who are oftentimes, because of that feeling, driven to get more education. Yeah.
Well, and even there's also, I think it's ego, but it's also this, let's say, biological urge to provide, be the hunter, right? In the background of men is men. My experience with men, especially in the stock market and investing, is they want to have it figured out. Like, they want to be the source of, I generated 20% return today. I made these 2 trades and it was just a brilliant call. So smart. And it's like, no, you don't know what the hell you're doing. Sorry, frankly. Like, there's no way you could predict the buying and selling decisions of the millions of other people involved in why that stock price went up. And if you think that you did, I'm sorry, like you're just delusional. And women tend to get that concept a lot easier than men. And I'll be frank, it took me a while too, because it's nice to feel like you have some kind of control. And anything I've ever had to change my mind around or actually like learn something that challenged the way that I thought, there were claw marks all over it before it was given up.
Yeah.
And that tends to be the case with men, and women just, again, I don't know if it's instinctual, what it is, but they like, there was an amazing lady client that I brought to the one of the events. And on day 2 of the event, she stands up and she says, for most of my adult life, I always just thought like this was something I would never understand. Investing and managing my money was just something I would never get. I thought I'm smart in all these other areas, but this area I'm just not smart in. She goes, I finally realized from this class that it was all the other people I worked with that didn't know what the heck they were talking about. And that it's actually pretty easy to understand when you're not all stuck with all the smoke and mirrors about it.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Well, and again, everything you're speaking to really is mindset. It is, how do I think about this whole area? And then, like you said, I mean, how you act is a reaction to your thoughts, basically. And that goes for every part of life. So money's no different, but we think of it as sort of this very kind of practical, linear dollars and cents thing that, has nothing to do with our thoughts and emotions, which is quite wrong.
Well, it's just not human, right? Because what's interesting about it is, like, think of something in your life that isn't in some way, shape, or form clouded by emotion or clouded by biases or clouded by something that happened in your past when you were a kid. Like, almost nothing that you could think of is separate or segmented from emotion or story from the past.
Mm-hmm. That's
almost
right.
all of it.
Yeah.
And so to think that money would be different, it's like, of course it's not. It's harder to see sometimes, but of course it's not different.
Right. And of course you have to have that awareness to be able to say that. So when you don't have the awareness, this is all sort of just mysterious gobbledygook. So,
that's a good way to put it.
never used that word in my life, but anyway. So for people listening thinking, well, if my emotions are going to take control of this and they're all over the place, then, am I doomed? So what would you say to people who are feeling like, I want my head in control here, not my emotions? What do I do about this?
The short of it is you're doomed. And I don't mean, no, but really is, there's a lot, like I see a lot of investment commercials that'll say, we take the emotions out of investing. It's like, no, you don't. Nobody takes the emotions out of investing. You will always have emotions. They'll never go away. The question becomes, what actions do you take as a function of your emotions? Are your emotions in control of you, or are you in control of your emotions? Or at least if you're not in control of your emotions, are you in control of how you respond to your emotions? And I think that's why it's so important. It's why it's so important to have a coach in the investment space, in the money management space. Like, we have people that are committed to high, performance, have coaches in a lot of areas, but the one that tends to miss is in the investing space. I'll have a coach for my money mindset. I'll have a coach for my business growth. I'll have a coach for my life. But when it comes to the investing piece, I just try to do it on my own, or follow the tips from TikTok, or do what other people, or even work with a financial advisor, but just do whatever they tell me to do and never actually learn or get any self-discovery around it. And I just think that that's a missing. And generally just won't work.
Right. So
investing is the one place, investing is one of those places where it's like, you make one mistake in 40 years, you throw everything off. It's one of the most important places to have someone that can actually teach you and keep you disciplined. And yet it's one of the places people have the least support.
That's really interesting, because people do think of their financial advisor as being, that's how they fill that gap with that person. But you're right. You're seeing what they're doing. You're, maybe being, you're seeing the results and they're going over that with you, but you're really not involved in the decision making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and even more than that, the average, I think we talk about emotion and relationships, right? Or emotion and the way we think about things. I think people have a really let's call it just a little bit of a weird way to deal with money and financial advisors. It's like if I was going to a primary care doctor and I started to have a condition, like something crazy happened that I needed to go to an emergency room, or I'm like the primary care physician can't figure out. I'm not going to go, well, you know, I really should go to the emergency room, but I've just got such a great relationship with my primary care doctor. I don't want to hurt that relationship. I don't want him to feel bad about me going to get care somewhere else. Mm-hmm. You know, you wouldn't do that. You'd go get care somewhere else. But people with money and investments and financial advisors, I know the answer. Because most people feel like they can't understand money and investing, they rely on trust factor. Mm-hmm. So if I trust you, then there's a greater damage to our relationship if you break that trust.
Yeah.
So, but that's not a great way to make money decisions. I work with someone. Well, how come? Well, because we go golfing every Friday. That's not a great, you wouldn't pick a heart surgeon based off of that.
Right.
So I think sometimes it's about learning how to even choose financial advisors, what kind of questions to ask, how to determine if they're a coach or if they're just a traditional, advisor. And again, not that a traditional advisor is bad, it's just not generally going to fit the bill for the psychology piece of it.
Right. So do you consider yourself a coach in this as well as an advisor? And so how do you, because I've never had I have advisors. I've never had one who I would consider a coach. And I totally get the trust factor thing. I mean, I've been with one person for a very long time. And, we meet and he tells me how he did. And I just accept it. It's like, maybe we could have done way better, but, how do I know? So,
that's great. That's a perfect example of, again, nothing wrong with it. However, what usually happens is, like, when does someone start to, if you look at, like, if we kind of project out into the future, when does someone start to question a relationship with a financial advisor? It's usually when something's going wrong. Like, I lose 50% of my portfolio. Wait a minute, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
Or my friends are telling me they're making 30% per year and I'm making 5%. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what's going on? By then it's usually too late. So the most powerful thing people can do, and I think this is what differentiates, like, let's say one of the areas that differentiates me, I actively suggest that my clients go talk to other people. You want to confirm who you're working with is the best person that you could be working with, that they have the best strategy, they have the best solution. You want to actually, because again, no one can care more about your money than you. And nobody, like, if I'm a financial advisor and I mess up or suggest something to you and you put your money in some place and lose it all, it's not like I'm really liable for that, right?
Right.
So it's on you to make sure that you're getting the best advice. And I think part of that is having someone willing to allow you, like, not be frustrated or upset if you go check something else out.
Right.
And if you go check something else out and ask me about it, I should be able to answer it. Mm-hmm. Or explain to you why that doesn't make sense, or why we didn't suggest that, or how that doesn't fit into the strategy. Mm-hmm. Because if I can't, well, what are you trusting about me? Right.
Yeah, so interesting. So what exactly is your process? You've got me curious now.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I'm wondering what I'm missing.
Well, and I want to be clear, you may not be missing anything. The point is that empowerment, also, you said awareness. You said it perfectly, that most people aren't aware. When you become aware is when you have more power. Right. And so in the place that we generally lack a lot of awareness, even if we start to get money aware, is we lack awareness in the investing space and in dealing with different, financial people. And so that's all at the end of the day, do I care, let me say this differently. What I care about is people knowing that what they're doing is the best for them. Mm-hmm. If I'm just trusting it's the best for me and I don't have any way to verify it, I don't have any way to compare it, I'm just kind of blindly going like this, man, I hope this works out. Mm-hmm. It's just not really powerful, that's all.
Yeah.
And so the starting place for my relationship with people is actually getting clear. We have a I would say it's an hour and a half meeting, but usually it ends up being like 2.5, dependent on the person. But it's like a deep dive. I call it an inventory, and it's a deep dive into what is the current situation around money and investing. What are your current problems around money? What's your current peace of mind around money? How long have you been dealing with some of these concerns? Let's say someone says, I'm worried about retirement. How long have you been worried about whether or not you'd be able to retire? Who have you worked with to try to fix this? What kind of solutions have they suggested? How have those made you feel? Have any of those actually worked for you? And then from there, actually transitioning into starting to teach, or at least have people discover what they don't actually know about investing. Like how important is it for you to control risk in how you invest? Do you have a way to measure that? If you don't have a way to measure it, but it's important for you to control it, how can you measure something, or how can you control something you don't know how to measure?
Interesting.
And then you're just totally relying on the advisor you're working with. Well, that's fine. But when you find out they're measuring it or not is when it all goes to shit. Excuse my language. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
You're very loud. Anything's allowed. Well, within some.
Okay. Or even like diversity. Here's a great one. Even diversification. I ask a lot of people, is diversification important to you? And most people will say yes. And
Well,
I'll say,
don't you think most people are saying yes because that's what they've heard? Like, you got to diversify.
Yes,
so
exactly.
they say yes. They don't even
No,
really...
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'll say, well, do you understand, what diversification is supposed to mean? And most of the time the answer I get is, well, you don't have all your eggs in one basket. It's fine, but it's actually a misunderstanding of the scientific principle of modern portfolio theory. The actual science of diversification is, if we were to put it into a metaphor, is don't have crappy eggs. So that would mean I need to actually be able to determine if something is a crappy egg or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
And so if like as another metaphor and analogy, most people, when it comes to investing, are sitting in a car, like an Uber driver, or like an Uber, right? Where they don't know what any of the signs mean. They don't know what the red light means. They don't know what the stop sign means. They don't know what the green light means. They don't know what the turn signals mean. They don't know what any of that means. So they're just blindly trusting that the driver knows what they're doing, hoping that they're going to get to their destination safely. Meanwhile, probably freaking out about stuff they don't need to be freaking out about, and not worried about stuff they should be worried about. Like if the driver runs a red light, but I don't know what a red light means, I'm not going to be worried about that, but I probably should be.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Great analogy.
my process with thank you. My process with investing is I don't need someone to understand the science to the level that I understand it, but they need to be able to know the signs so that they can hold me accountable and that they can hold themselves accountable. If your advisor metaphorically runs through a red light, you should be able to know that, and you should be able to call them on it. Hey, wait a minute. This wasn't part of our strategy. You said you'd never do this. Why? But I'm seeing this now happen. Why is that the case?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And it makes me think about my own dad, who always had financial advisors, but kept himself so knowledgeable about all of it. So I would hear him on the phone, and he would be choosing a lot of things, and then they would have sort of a back and forth about it. But he knew what he was after, and when things would happen, he knew what was going on, and then he would call them versus, either silence or just kind of going with it, I guess. But I never really thought about it that way until you just mentioned it. I just thought he was a very detail-oriented research scientist kind of guy, so I thought that was just his personality. But that's actually a great strategy to implement with this. So
yeah. Well, and so it sounds like your dad was a super smart dude, and he did a lot of research.
Yeah.
And a lot of like maybe he spent, this was like an additional hobby of his, of spending a good amount of time looking at this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're not the kind of person that wants to do that, or, because there's on one hand, no one can care more about your money than you can. But at the other hand, it doesn't want to be a second job where you're trying to figure out what to tell your financial advisor what to do. So it needs to just be knowing enough to hold someone accountable while still allowing them to do their job. So I'll give you an example. Like I have a promise to clients that we're not going to speculate and gamble with their money. one of the ways that advisors speculate and gamble is they constantly move money between funds. Oh, this fund's really great. This one's 5-star rated on Morningstar. It's so good. And then next year, hey, we're actually going to move to this strategy instead. And then the next year, hey, we're going to move to this strategy instead. And if you take the principle that no one can predict the future, then the amount of bouncing around you do in your portfolio is generally not going to work very well.
That's really interesting.
There's actual...
Because I thought that was just a natural part of it, the whole rebalancing thing, and you do that, regularly. So
rebalancing is entirely different.
Okay.
So rebalancing is valuable, but rebalancing is entirely different from just moving money for no reason.
Okay. So why would they do that, moving for no reason, to make it look like they're doing something?
Well,
I mean, what is that?
Yeah. Well, it's like this. When I say no reason, what I mean is no scientific or logical reason, just a hunch, right? So again, there's studies that show that the mutual funds or the investment strategies that were like the top last year, like Morningstar rated, top rated, the next year usually are the lowest ratings.
Interesting.
But usually financial advisors follow the ratings. If they're picking their own investments, they're following the rating structures. So they're going to put money into the top rated mutual fund. It's not going to do well the next year based on all the studies about it, which means they're going to have to justify what they're doing. How do I justify keeping you in a fund that just tanked?
Yeah.
So now I got to move to another fund. But all of that is gambling. If I knew which fund was going to be the best, why didn't I just have you in that to begin with? Or why am I not just sitting on a private island somewhere, on my yacht, drinking a martini? Right? And so this is where some of that knowledge becomes really important to start to determine, is my financial advisor actually a coach? Are they actually using scientific principles in how they invest, or are they kind of just going off of hunches, playing with my money?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this. So for my purpose and, for my knowledge and probably other people's out there, I'm sort of a little stuck on this rebalancing is good, this other moving around not so much. And so how do you define the rebalancing part of it? Because I had those kind of mixed up.
Well, so what's the purpose of rebalancing would be the question. So the purpose of rebalancing is, well, I'll ask you a question. So everybody knows the basic principle that buy low and sell high is important, right?
Right.
You want to buy low and sell high. The operative question becomes, well, how do I do that? How do I actually design my portfolio to buy low and sell high without trying to make predictions of the future? The only way to do it is properly rebalancing. So how the science around rebalancing is, I pick a risk level that I'm willing to take. So let's say I'm willing to be 50% of my portfolio in the stock market, 50% of it in safe alternatives.
Okay.
And that's the risk I'm willing to take. Well, in any given year, one of those is going to move more than the other, right? So if let's say the stock market goes up 40%. Well, if I'm 50% in stocks, that portion is going to skyrocket. If I don't do anything, I'm now out of balance. I'm out of whack.
Okay.
And the only way to get myself back into alignment is I have to sell those stocks that are inflated in value and buy my risk-free alternative, balancing myself back to 50-50. And vice versa, if the market drops 40%, if I don't do anything, I'm now taking way less risk than I designed myself to take. So then I'd have to sell the safe alternative, buy into the stocks back to 50-50.
Okay.
So rebalancing on a scientific principle is designing your portfolio based on the risk you're willing to take to always buy low and sell high relative to that risk.
Wow, great explanation. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, it's the one piece. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that are missed, but that one's really missed. If you had like a proper design of your portfolio and it had all of the right asset classes and it had no crappy eggs, and then you don't rebalance, then as markets are skyrocketing, sure, you're capturing that, but the moment it drops, you lose way more than you should have.
Okay. Okay. So it's mitigating those losses, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a terrible example because we don't gamble, but it'd be the equivalent of winning in a casino and taking some of your winnings off the table.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and of course, buy low, sell high. Nobody actually knows where the low is or the high is. So there's always a bit of, guesswork, or maybe it's not. If you're doing it more scientifically, maybe, that's the wrong word for it. But in my case, it's guesswork.
Yes. Well, it would always be guesswork it's always guesswork. I'm going to say it's rare that financial advisors can make blatant, statements like this, but I'm going to make it. It's always guesswork if you are not rebalancing for risk.
Okay. Because
the only reason you'd be rebalancing is because you are trying to predict future movements.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Very, very interesting. I wanted to make sure we got in some things that are like near and dear to my heart. One is investing for purpose. It's something that you've talked a little about. And since my whole Limit Free Life company was originated on people being on purpose and finding work that was purposeful. So what do you mean by that?
Well, it's a good question. It's a long answer. Here's the short of it is, everything has a purpose. Anything in someone's life has a purpose. They just generally don't determine it for themselves. It usually has like a default purpose.
Interesting.
So if we look at money, right, and you look at how human psychology and the brain works, what's the purpose, the default purpose of money? And the default purpose of money is survival. Mm-hmm. And so the weird thing about that being the default purpose for money is that there is no amount of money that will cause me to feel having survived.
Interesting.
If I have $1 million, I will see and this is again just how the brain works. I have $1 million. I see someone with 10 million. I feel like my survival odds are lower. I need to get to that 10 million. I get to that 10 million. I see someone with 100 million. Again, in the competitive arms race of the psychology of survival, now I'm inadequate. I need more. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this stems back in the day. Literally, you would die if you didn't have enough. If you had a small tribe and there was a bigger tribe across the hill and they had more stuff than you, and they came over, they would take your stuff and kill you, and take your family. Right? And so there's this biological urge to survive, and the brain interprets the money conversation the same way it would interpret, having more troops or having more resources than a neighboring civilization. And so it always has a purpose. And that's the reason why we say, like cliche, money can't make you happy. But the reason money can't make you happy is because there's never enough to feel that you've made it.
Yeah, isn't that such a trap? Because people are constantly thinking, well, if I can just get to this point, if I can just get $1 million in my retirement, I'll feel great. But that's a myth. I mean, maybe you do. Certain people will. But most people, like you say, you get to that next level and there's a level beyond that So I think that's a really, really interesting point. So what do you do about that? I mean, you don't want to chase a moving target for your whole life.
Right. Well, so the answer, and it's not a simple answer, but it's also not complicated, is if everything has a purpose and the default purpose of money is survival, then the opportunity is to create my own purpose for it that's greater than survival. And so that we have a whole 2-day class that's designed around both the science of investing and the mindset of purpose. It's called the American Dream Experience that you mentioned in the bio. But that's, there's a science to it. There's actual brain science around creation of purpose and why it's valuable, and how almost everything that's really been done in life that's astounding that you look at and go, whoa, how'd that happen? It's happened with someone that created a purpose. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so everybody has the opportunity to create a purpose. You just need to discover what that looks like.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the application to money. I mean, purpose also has been proven to help people just be happier in their life and have a longer life. I mean, you don't want to you don't want to leave too soon when you have a big purpose out there that you need to fulfill. So purpose serves so many functions, and I kind of love the idea of it within that realm of money as well.
Yeah. And so, well, in that realm, right? If I have a purpose for money, then it becomes really important that my investing. So we said investing with a purpose. Well, if I have a purpose for my money, then my investing also needs to follow suit with that purpose, right? And it becomes much more important what I do. So, like, if my default purpose is survival, then it doesn't really matter if I gamble with cryptocurrencies or commodities, or if I spend 24/7 doing day trading. Right? That's not as important. But now let's say my purpose is to leave a family legacy and to be present with my kids. Okay, well, how much time does day trading take away from that? And does it actually produce the result of leaving the legacy that I want and being able to be present and spend time with my family and my kids? If the answer is no, then that's a reason to give up that action. Besides the fact that it generally doesn't work, it's to give it up because you have a purpose greater than just the pursuit of the pleasure or the pursuit of the addiction. And that's what, again, most people miss. And this is where I said men are sometimes a little harder, is if the creating a purpose sometimes requires the humbling of the ego. And that's where let's say there's a little bit more friction. I work well with men. I don't want to put it out there I don't work well with men. They just usually require a little bit more tough love sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm just curious how, when you talk about things like purpose with them, I mean, that's probably a little new and kind of a fresh thing to talk with your advisor about. What kind of reaction do you usually get?
Well, I'll give you a real life example of one conversation I had with my dad. My dad was a day trader for 20 years, every day in and out. I grew up in Hawaii. We were in Hawaii. And he'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, do some trades, go back to sleep, wake up at like 5, do some more trades, go back to sleep, wake up before the market closed, did some more trades, went out and ran his real estate business.
Oh, okay.
And then would come home at night, look over the charts, and go back to sleep and do it all over again for 20 years. They even moved to the East Coast to be more on a time zone friendly to day trading.
Wow.
And I had him attend the 2-day workshop, the American Dream Experience. And day one, we're talking about purpose. And he was saying, well, it seems really good, like really motivational, but I don't really see how it applies or how it's really going to change anything about what I'm up to. And so him and I are talking, and I'm talking about it's not motivational. It's actually, purpose can be that thing that makes a huge difference for you. And we were talking about it, and he's kind of laughing it off a little bit. And I said, listen, you need the purpose because you need your money to last for another 20 to 30 years so that you can fulfill on what's important to you. And I know family is incredibly important to you. And he kind of laughs a little bit, and he says, boy, I'm not going to make it another 20 or 30 years. And I stopped, and I put on my coach hat. And I said, yeah, you're right. You're not. And he goes, what? I said, you're not. I said, you are actively killing yourself because you're too damn proud to admit that you can't figure this out. And you're too proud to let go of the desire to be the one who masters it, instead of just being present with your family and working on your actual purpose with it, which is, I know, family. You do everything for family. You're one of 7 kids, and you're the only one who's ever helped your mom. You take care of some of the other kids who are on the same level as you. They're older than you, and you help them financially. Family is one of the most important things to you, and you're wasting your time and the availability you have to make a difference for your family doing this damn thing that you're trying to just prove to somebody that can be done, I guess, to yourself. I said, here's the sad part. My wife was 4 months pregnant at that point. I said, here's the sad part. I said, the saddest part is I'm going to have to tell your granddaughter about who you were instead of you getting to meet her and show her who you are, because you won't give this up.
Wow. Wow, that's and did he come around?
Yes, he took that, spent the next day really diving in, learning, got it, like a light bulb went off, got it, and it's been 4 years and he hasn't day traded at all.
Wow, that is so interesting. So tell
So
us
I actually
about...
got my family, like my dad's a very big part of my daughter's life now, and I got that because of being willing to stand for his discovery. And I think that's an example, just of, like, I did that with my dad. I'll do that with anybody to make a difference. So you don't have to like it, but I'm committed that your life works. And I'll challenge whatever it takes to challenge to have your life work, which, again, I think is different than the traditional financial advisor.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. And having an outside observer is always valuable. We can't see what we're doing. Once it becomes a habit over a long period of time, we need somebody else to look at us and say, this is what I think is going on. But that American Dream experience is sounding really, really intriguing. So can you tell us a little about that and how people can find out about it?
Yeah, sure. So the short of it is, it's actually what caused my business transformation. I was so this was 8 years into working with an insurance company, and on my journey of figuring out how the brain works and what part the brain plays in all of this. And along the line, I started to realize that the investing stuff we were doing wasn't working. And it was literally like, our company would bring in a wholesaler to talk about an investment strategy. Wholesaler would talk about the investment strategy. If it sounded good, we would go then share that with our clients. And it was literally nothing more than the blind leads the blind. Like the company brings in a wholesaler spins a story. We like the story. We spin the same story to the client. Nobody's verifying along the way what's actually going on. And so started to realize, like, it wasn't working. Like, we put them in a strategy. They wouldn't make money, or they'd lose money. They'd be upset. We'd talk to the investment company. They would say, try this other strategy instead. We'd move them to that other strategy, and it wouldn't work. And then it was just rinse and repeat. And along the way, I learned about my now mentor, Mark Mattson, so a company called Mattson Money. And in 2017, I attended a 2-day session. Whereas someone 8 years in the business as a certified financial planner and a chartered financial consultant, in that 2-day discussion, I learned more about the actual scientific principles of investing than I'd learned in my whole career.
Wow.
And it blew my mind. And I went back to my old firm and said, we need to teach this. And they said, well, we can't, because if people learn to not be afraid of this stuff, they won't buy the insurance products. And that's where we make most of our money. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
I didn't know that. And so I left 2 months after that conversation, started Paradigm Shift, and partnered with Mattson Money for the money management piece, while I coach and teach the brain science piece. Along the way, there was a conversation about taking that 2-day event that was for strictly financial advisors. I was like, we need to actually turn this towards the public. Like, the public needs to have access to this conversation. And they're like, well, we're actually working on that. We're creating it. And it's called the American Dream Experience. And it's a client-facing conversation about, again, the brain science, how the brain works, how to actually, like, notice where your brain's working against you when it comes to investing. We have this fun exercise we do in the event where we have everybody, it's inevitable. It always happens this way. We talk to them and we teach them about how biases work. And then we have them all pick 3 different companies that they would invest in if they had, $10,000. And then we put up 5 different stocks on the board and ask everybody to stand up if we picked one of their stocks, and inevitably 90% of the room stands up.
Wow.
And the point to illustrate is, you don't pick things, your biases pick them. Herding bias, recency bias, hindsight bias, all of these different biases are actually what go into most people's investing. They don't even realize it.
This is great. This is so cool. I'm really, you think that you've heard of all the things out there, and then you hear about something that you've never heard of, and that's half the fun of doing this podcast. So, what a great resource. And if people go to your website, can they find this info?
Yeah, the best site to go to that happens to also be mine is it's a co-branded site with Mattson. So it actually teaches a little bit about the American Dream experience on the page, and it's paradigmshift.adxleader.com.
Okay. I'll put that in the show notes too. Wow,
Awesome.
That's super amazing. And
then
that's
the reason
done...
we call it the American Dream experience is because the whole idea of where the American Dream comes from is originally in a book from 1931 called The Epic of America, where it's the idea of life being greater and richer and fuller for everyone, regardless of where their birthright or their position in life. And the idea is, again, it's all mindset. That 1931, what he was pointing to, the author was pointing to, was what makes America different is if you have the mindset for greatness, you can have it.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? All these old books. I've been reading and rereading The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, and it's all your beliefs and, the things that you don't think they were probably talking about in 1909, gratitude and beliefs and all of this stuff. And that's exactly what it's about. So it's so interesting. Thank you so much. I could talk to you all day, actually, but this has been really great, really a kind of deep dive into some different areas with respect to money, and also, some great practical thoughts and ideas and resources for people. So I can't thank you enough for being here. I have one more question for you before we go. Because you've done this studying around, your mindset around money and all of that, can you recommend a book that you found particularly good for people on this topic?
Yes, actually, there's a few different books I'd recommend. The most recent one that just came out is actually called Experiencing the American Dream by Mark Mattson.
Oh, okay, great.
He literally just wrote it last year, or published it and distributed it as of August of this year. It's already a national bestseller. It's one of the best books I've had the opportunity to read about this topic. Another one not related to actual investing, but definitely related to the concepts we're talking about, is a book called Language and the Pursuit of Happiness.
Interesting.
And it's the idea that our words create, our words are not descriptive in nature, they're actually generative. They create. And so what we say becomes incredibly important.
Yeah. Wow. Do you?
And then one. Sorry, not
no.
to. Sorry.
Great.
It's your show. I apologize. What I realized that I wanted to also leave people with was, I talked a lot about science, but then I didn't really leave people with like, okay, well, I have an advisor. What kind of questions? How would I know if they're using any of this stuff? So I just wanted to leave with at least one question of, probably the best question that you could ask your advisor. And then what you want to do is just notice how they answer it. Do they answer it confidently? Do they stutter a little bit? Did what they say make sense, or was it confusing? Just ask them what kind of scientific principles they use in building the portfolios that they have you invested in.
Wow, that's great. And I'm sure people are not asking that question. So thank you. That's a gem. Yeah.
Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a lot of fun and very informative. And again, I really appreciate your time today. And we've got your paradigm shift .training. Is that what's on there? I can't see very well right from here.
Oh, .adxleader.com. I can put it in the chat if you want me to.
I can grab that. I'm just trying to see, because people can see what's on what's under your name right there, and I just want to make sure I'm saying it. But
that is not correct, unfortunately. But
okay, good. Then let's get the correct one. Can we?
Okay.
Yeah, we can change that out too. So, okay. So yes, if you would put the correct one in the chat, that would be excellent.
Okay, I'll do it. We were just talking about being calm and dealing with life through the shifts, right?
Yeah.
Through the uncertainty is a perfect example.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. I actually had
there you go.
oh gosh, I had a long-term care expert on, and he was talking, and we had an earthquake in the middle of the show. And so
Oh my gosh.
The studio really shook. And he was like, well, there you go. You never know what's going to happen. So, it's a perfect segue. But, okay, Thomas.
So he was actually in the studio for that one?
Yeah. Oh, no, he wasn't in the studio. Just me shaking around. So I told him about it. And then he looked it up. While I'm telling him about it and feeling it, he's looking it up on Google and telling me what the magnitude of the earthquake was. So, anyway.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, really, what a pleasure. And I'd love to keep in touch with you. And I hope the audience will reach out to you as well. Some great information here. And so those of you listening, please reach out to Thomas and have a conversation with him. I assume, Thomas, that you work with people in other states. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I've been actually virtual before it was cool to be virtual.
Okay, good.
Back in 2015, I was using GoToMeeting for like 90%, or WebEx, one of the two.
Yeah.
For most of my meetings. So yeah.
Okay, terrific. And I just invited people to contact you. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
It's at the end of the day, I believe in an abundance perspective. Like there's enough people out there, there's enough advisors out there that are really doing an amazing job. At the end of the day, the most important thing for you, anybody, is to just validate that is the case. You don't want to wait till something goes wrong to find out if the person you were working with was doing the right stuff. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, it's less important for me that they talk to me. And it's more important great, talk to me. I'm happy to.
Yeah.
But it's more important that they actually have confidence in their existing person that's not based off of blind trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Great point. So listeners, please, if you liked the show and can think of people who could use this information, please share it. And we love reviews. So if you can rate the show and review it, that would be amazing. Share with your friends. And that helps us to bring other great guests like Thomas on. And thank you so much for listening. You can reach out to me at michelle@limitfreelife.com and check out my website, get hooked up with my community by giving us your name and email on the website, and you'll receive some great regular wisdom through that as well. And love having you here. See you next week.